Yes, good morning. Ministers say 250,000 green industrial jobs could be created. And to you, that's right, the way we generate our energy, especially electricity, has been dramatically changing over the past few decades. So just 10 years ago, about 3/4 of our electricity came from generators powered by coal and natural gas. But there's been a global shift away from fossil fuels because of those harmful gases that they produce. So last year, the government committed to net zero by 2050. That means the amount of greenhouse gas produced must be met by the amount removed from the atmosphere. But that demands big changes. So coal stations will shut and there'll be more power from wind and solar. But last year, renewables provided 40% of the UK's energy mix. Now, the government says they cannot be relied upon 100%, and so they're investing in nuclear as what's called a baseload supply. The BBC's chief environment correspondent, Justin Rowlatt, has been taking a look. Justin there talking about the scale of the challenge to meet that 2050 target. And you know, Dan and Louise, you won't meet many business owners who'll say to you they don't agree that that's a really great target for us to have. It's the practicalities around meeting those targets. So later I'll be talking to the boss of Vauxhall. They're all about building new electric vehicles, but what they say is, are there enough charging points? Are they popular enough with the consumer? And crucially, how is consumer behaviour going to change when we think about coming out of coronavirus and also Brexit in the next few months?
You're talking to me later. Thank you.
Put some of those questions.
Good morning. You would be forgiven for delaying thoughts about a new car for the time being, but the switch to electric will affect all motorists. Petrol and diesel are being phased out because we know how damaging they are to our health and to the environment. So last year, the government committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2050. What that means is the amount of gas produced must be met by the amount removed by the atmosphere. About a third of CO2 emissions in the UK at the moment come from transport. So to help meet that commitment, the government has already committed to banning the sale of new diesel and petrol cars. Back in February, the Prime Minister said he wanted that ban to come in 2035. We now know that that plan's been brought forward 5 years to 2035, although the sale of some hybrid cars will be allowed a little longer. Now, that 5-year acceleration is really significant. And that's because at the moment, just 7% of cars sold in the UK are battery electric. One of the main obstacles to consumers is cost. One of the UK's most popular electric cars, the Nissan Leaf, costs around £27,000 for the basic model. Compare that to a similar 5-door hatchback's running price on petrol, like the Dacia Sandero. Well, that's about £8,000, a third of the price. Yes, the running costs of electric are cheaper, but consumers also worry about charging. It's a hard sell, isn't it? A big challenge ahead for consumers and for the car industry and for the government. Let's speak to Stephen. Put on you around 3,000 staff at Vauxhall. You're already making the Corsa E that's electric. The Vivero van is just behind in production. What do you have to do practically now? What do your staff have to do? In infrastructure, the big issue at the moment, the main stumbling block, is selling it to the consumer. We just talked about the cost, so a Corsa E20. That's interesting, isn't it? He thinks it can have this commitment. It's making sure everything around it is in place, particularly charging points and, crucially, bringing the price down so that it's more appealing to the consumer.